Right, welcome back to the channel for our typical end of the week / weekend type video. I am Hamish, you know that by now. We're also joined by the usual squad of Euan and Pearse. Right, guys, we're going to take a look at what a Celtic manager needs to be. We've all given our thoughts on who we want the Celtic manager to be specifically. We know who the favourites are. We've covered that quite a lot on the channel. So we're going to take a look at the general idea of a Celtic manager and almost build our perfect Celtic manager. This is based on an article you wrote on the website, euan67hailhail.com. I will link that in the description. The floor is yours, mate. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the premise of the article and what your main findings were, if you found anything out?
Well, I mean, I would say, first of all, it's an excellent article. You should click on it more than once, is my suggestion. Yeah, it's just kind of looking at the sort of the weird variance of candidates. So everyone from Enzo Maresca, your man Hamish, to Sean Dyche and Mick McCarthy, there seems to be a bit of confusion about what Celtic are actually after, and the club are not helping in that regard. So it's a case of saying, well, what's worked in the past? So playing the Celtic way, if you will. Recruitment is really, really important. And being a sort of recognised name, I think at this point in time, they're all really, those are three really important factors, I think, in a Celtic managerial hunt. So that disqualifies quite a lot of names we've heard already. But yeah, it's just a sort of look at the confusion behind who is it Celtic actually want, what's the profile of the manager Celtic actually want, and why are we being linked with so many kind of contrasting managerial styles? It's just a bit confusing when you hear we're going to be playing tiki taka under Eddie Howe one week, and then the next day it's kick and rush with Mick McCarthy. It's hard to get your head around a lot of time, and there's definitely a split in the support about what Celtic kind of need at this point. So it's just exploring that really. Share with your friends.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is genuinely a good read. Such a good read that it gave me the idea for this video. So thanks for that.
Stop.
Yeah, I think the director of football will definitely help with getting a general Celtic idea. I think the Celtic idea amongst the support is that we do tend to play good football and we aim to play good football. And I know in the article you commented on the fact that that's why maybe Tommy Burns in the past and Joseph Venglos, I think, as well. Two guys who sadly are no longer with us. They are kind of remembered fondly by the Celtic support, even though their teams didn't necessarily get the results because we played good football. And, on the flip side is that Gordon Strachan's teams, which probably get the best results in the 21st century. You could argue maybe Martin O'Neill's team
Arguably,
was slightly better, but in terms of European football and getting to the last 16 of the Champions League twice, he should be remembered more fondly, but the style of football maybe holds him back. In terms of the Celtic man, Pearse, is it important to you? Does it matter to you if the next Celtic manager is a Celtic man? Does he have to be a guy who knows the club, or does he have to be a guy who has no, attraction and no affiliation with the club?
In my opinion, they don't necessarily need to be a Celtic man. They just need to know the importance of managing Celtic and the expectations, and they just need to kind of get a identity that they want to play and get that drilled in as early as possible. But obviously, in my opinion, they need to shore up the defence whilst also playing nice attractive football to really excite the fans and get the fans on board early.
Does a manager have to be a big name, Ewan? And is that achievable anymore for Celtic? Brendan Rodgers was definitely a big name. Ronnie Dyler wasn't a big name. Neil Lennon, in some part, probably was a big name, but not in the managerial sphere. So does it have to be a box office appointment like Brendan Rodgers to get everyone back on side?
I don't think necessarily. I think it depends on the kind of manager. So, someone like Chipikovsky at Slavia Prague isn't maybe a big name in UK football circles, but he would represent a coup for Celtic at this stage. You could argue that Eddie Howe's not the biggest name in the world, but equally he's had a great deal of success in England, and he's a big name kind of in context. He's not up there with Guardiola or Mourinho or whoever, but he's in the context of what we need is probably a big name or a blockbuster name. Obviously, kind of Rafa Benitez, who I don't, for the record, think will be the Celtic manager. He's kind of biggest. He's the most sort of Hollywood, if you like, of all the managerial sort of quote unquote candidates we've had. So I think it's context because Brendan Rodgers, he was definitely a big name for the time. But there are other jobs where he would be considered kind of small fry or an outsider. So it's all about context. I don't think necessarily Celtic need a big name, but someone with pulling power, someone who's at least had, if not a successful playing career, then a decent background in coaching. So someone like Enzo Maresca, who was a cup winner with Sevilla and has worked with big names. He's big name adjacent. That has a lot of impact in terms of recruitment. And I think someone who's sort of tried and tested to some degree and has a good reputation is important. Whether or not you agree with this big name, small name thing is kind of your own call to make, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between a big name and a good manager, isn't there? I mean, examples of a big name that have been linked with the Celtic job, look at Roy Keane, look at Henrik Larsson. I mean, I don't know if Henrik Larsson has been properly linked, but I'm doing it anyway, so people can take from that what they want. But then you compare that to someone like Enzo Maresca, who quite clearly isn't a big name, and that would probably be held against him by a lot of Celtic fans if he is appointed. I can already see it. I've already seen the comments on the channel saying that we need a box office appointment to really put Rangers back in their place type thing. And I don't necessarily, hold that opinion against people. But, the club pushing the boat out possibly does mean that fans are more likely to get on board. I mean, that's the reason why we had the Let's Go All In tifo from the standing section, I think a matter of weeks after Brendan Rodgers was appointed. By the same logic, taking the cheap option doesn't reflect well on the club and probably means that managers are more likely to come under pressure. I mean, Neil Lennon, when he came in for his second stint, got to remember he did really well in his interim charge, and then literally the first kind of bump in the road was the Cluj defeat, and fans were turning, and it was vitriolic after that defeat. So, Pearse, do you think a big name manager almost gives the support more belief and almost gives the manager himself more time to get things right?
I think so. I think so. Because it'll help the fans get on board quicker, and it'll obviously have to help as well with like transfers, like pulling power. Because obviously we all know this summer will be like massive in terms of outgoings and ingoings. So we'll need like some big names because obviously if we're going to lose Odsonne or Christopher Ayer, we'll need like quality summer to replace them because they're massive important players for our team.
I've nailed my colours to the mast with the Enzo Maresca stuff. I know people will say that there's bigger names and people who have actually managed a team at senior level. I just think if we get in a director of football, aka Fergal Harkin or David Webb, and get him working with someone like Enzo Maresca, who's clearly on the up, that would be positive. Pearse, what do you think of the Enzo Maresca idea? And also, how do you think that would go down in general with supporters if he was the guy that we pumped for?
I've not heard a great deal of him as like a coach, but obviously with Celtic, I've got that link previously with like Dedrick Boyata, Patrick Roberts, and most recently Jeremy Frimpong. So we kind of would probably he'd probably bring a few players with us that are young players that no one was probably heard of that would probably do well for us. But I think he would take a wee while for fans to get on board because obviously he's not proven at senior level as a manager. Obviously, he's been assistant to Pellegrini and stuff like that, so that would help obviously in terms of like, I think it'd be good in terms of recruitment and obviously work alongside Fergal Harkin, which would potentially be a good bit of business if you get him as director of football.
Euan, what's your thoughts on Enzo Maresca and how do you think it would be perceived by fans? Would it be looked at as a cheap option?
First of all, I think it was maybe Football Manager 08 where Enzo Maresca was an absolute steal, by the way. So if you're going back and playing that game, go for it. No, I think it kind of lives or dies by two factors. The first being that there needs to be the infrastructure around him to succeed. So if Enzo Maresca comes in as like a head coach or even a manager in a sort of more European model, and the appointments are made around him, for him to just focus on on match days, setting up the team, leading training, that could work. I also think he would need an experienced assistant manager or coach, someone with more than a few years of managerial experience to help him along in his first job. So that would involve him bringing in his own staff alongside him. I don't know how much Celtic are interested in doing that. Obviously, there's pre-established links with coaches. I think both of Gordon Strachan's sons are involved in the Celtic setup. Obviously, Gavin with his laptop, but I think maybe Chris Strachan, who's a scout. Obviously, there's the John Kennedy factor. There's Danny McGrain. So yeah, I think a lot of it depends on how Celtic set up around him, because he might not necessarily want it with all strings attached. And I think it's a good appointment if Celtic give him the freedom to appoint his own guys, but if not, there could be real issues there, especially for a rookie manager.
Yeah, you're kind of signing up to mistakes, Pearse, aren't you? You're admitting and you're kind of accepting that in his first senior job as a manager, mistakes would be made. I mean, you look across the city, and I mean, Gerrard, might have got it right this season, but it's taken him 2 years of winning no trophies to finally get it right. Can Celtic afford to choose a project manager?
In my opinion, probably not. But I don't think things will just turn around quickly. It's not going to be a quick fix. It's maybe going to be one or two windows where we get the squad right, because there is quite a lot of kind of aging players, and there's a lot of young players leaving as well. So we kind of need to get the balance right again and start signing the right type of players. But I think he should be given at least a season to try succeed if he was given the job. But it's going to be it's going to be a tall ask, because fans obviously demand Champions League football, they demand challenging for the title and challenging for the domestic cups. So it's going to be tough, but it's a harsh environment, and he's got to be ready for it if he takes the job.
Any other things to mention, Euan, from your article?
I mean, I haven't really from that article. It didn't really nail any colours to the mast in terms of names, but I do think likes of Howe and Chipkovsky have to be. If there's a 5-man shortlist, then I think they would be 2 names on it. I do think there are pros and cons for Enzo Maresca, but ultimately, if you like looking back through previous managerial regimes and you like names like Willie Maley, then you'll like the article, and then you'll read a bunch of others because of how much you like that one.
Well, that's the aim. I do think, just to conclude this video, I think I don't talk for the Celtic support at all, but I think there is a feeling, amongst certainly a lot of Celtic fans, that we just want something to get excited about with this managerial appointment. We don't necessarily have, individual people will have their preferred candidate. That's natural. Everyone has that. But I think in general, what we want is an appointment that we go, right, we can get behind this. We don't want a Celtic man, I don't think, in general, coming into the job again. We certainly don't want someone who, is a bit of a tired figure in terms of football management. I'm talking like a Mick McCarthy or even like a Mark Hughes. I just think we want someone fresh and exciting. That's the way football's going now. You look at the top teams in Europe, pretty much all of them are managed by up-and-coming managers, and I think we want to be a part of that. And of course, there's risks with that, but I think the the benefits outweigh the risks. So yeah, that's my conclusion, guys. Thanks very much for joining me for this video. Thanks everyone for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to around about just under 12k by the end of the month, so that's probably achievable. So if you're watching this video, maybe you've just come across us, you've not yet subscribed to the channel, now is your time to do it. We'll speak to you soon.